welcome to the Esports Report. This is your host, Wil Nix, and his co-host, Ashley Hodge.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Esports Report. It is me, your lovely host, Ashley Hodge. I am flying solo tonight. As you have probably been able to tell, our podcast posting and video posting has got a little bit sporadic. It is a very busy time for teachers. We have a lot of stuff going on. I know as the audio and film teacher, I have prom coming up. I have special events that I'll have to broadcast. And the big one, graduation. So unfortunately, Wil cannot be here. He is busy with his educator duties. So I will be your lovely guide tonight. So I hope everybody's doing well. Today we have a very special guest. We have another nonprofit. He is from New Jersey. I would like to welcome Chris from New Jersey, and he's going to talk to us about Garden State Esports. We will be right back. Welcome everybody to the Esports Report. We are here with an awesome guest, Chris Aviles. Now, Chris, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Hi. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here. Big fan of the podcast. So I am a middle school STEM teacher in New Jersey. I would say, when we went home in March, I decided I wanted to try to help my kids stay connected during the pandemic when everything else in their life was canceled. So I started a little esports league, and I reached out to some colleges and some friends who were working in other schools that had video game clubs, and challenged them to play us in Rocket League. And a little over 2 years later, I have a nonprofit teacher-run scholastic esports league that is hosting a third of the state in competitions. So things have, escalated quickly, I guess they say.
I want to say that is quite impressive. You said 1/3 of the state.
Yeah, so we just added a 168th school district yesterday morning. We're excited because we also just got Trenton and Elizabeth, two of the largest school districts in New Jersey, who are ready to come aboard. So, our numbers are going to get even bigger. But I think that we have filled a need that has, kind of been missing for a lot of students in New Jersey. And, we're excited to serve them. And as teachers, everybody on my team is still in the classroom. We're excited to do so with their best interests in mind.
I gotta say, I'm very impressed.
Thanks.
It seems like it is a lot of work on top of what you already do as a teacher. So I am just very impressed.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely becoming a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun as well. And I'm lucky that I have not yet found a shortage of talented educators in New Jersey who are willing to, come aboard. And I try to, stipends and stuff when I can, but for the most part, like everything else, it's a labor of love. It's a passion project. Nobody's getting rich. Nobody's making a lot of money, but it's interesting. Like, I'm a big data nerd, if you didn't know. And so there's a lot of like interesting statistics and stuff like that, we find in Garden State Esports, and I feel like it's also kind of being echoed nationally because I'm not the only educator nonprofit. There's, at least another 15 out there doing things at a state level, but all being run by teachers for students. And, one of the things that we're finding as well is more than half of the coaches in Garden State Esports are club advisors, we call them. And that, one of the reasons we call them club advisors is they're not gamers. They're the favorite teacher at their school. And they went, these kids went to their favorite teacher and said, we really want this. Will you basically be the body in the room? And that kind of speaks to where this grassroots scholastic esports movement's kind of coming from. Is like anything else, it's just a lot of passionate educators trying to be there for their kids. So we're excited to, right now and hopefully forever, offer completely free scholastic esports competitions and curriculum and all kinds of fun stuff for Jersey schools for as long as we can.
Well, as a fellow educator, I enjoy hearing the word free.
Yeah. It's important to us, as we know that there's obviously equity issues in schools, and esports teams, just exacerbates the issue. And so we never want, league dues or anything like that to be a reason why a school is not willing to participate. And, maybe it sounds silly to those not in the education, sphere, but to, convince a district to maybe get some equipment, to maybe make an investment in STEM and get a couple of new computers and maybe, get a couple consoles, however a district does it, but then say we need to have recurring, funding to join this league for these competitions. I mean, a lot of times that's what winds up breaking the camel's back. Is not only do we need, sometimes this lift, and it's not necessarily that you need it, we do bring your own device and have districts that play for free. I have a couple of districts piloting GeForce Now on Chromebooks, and we're trying to find a way to get everybody in the game. But if you have to pay to compete, that's difficult, and I'm not sure what the setup is in Georgia, but I know New Jersey athletic directors do not want to add, another expense to their already tight athletic budgets. So most schools in New Jersey, right? I forget what the stats were, but it's like 98% of our clubs are year-long stipended clubs, and they're pulling money from student activities. They're pulling money from STEM. They're pulling money from SR2 funding and SEL initiatives. And so it's always just kind of making sure that we find a way to keep these kids in the game, and we don't want fees to be, part of that problem. So yeah, we try to keep it free. So far, so good.
Yeah, I will say in Georgia, it is very different. As you know, we have an athletic association, GHSA, and they partnered with Play Versus. And so we are locked in with Play Versus. So we do have to pay the fee twice a year, because there are 2 seasons in a year. And, that can bring about a myriad of problems, but because Play Versus is the official sanction for varsity sports, that is where Georgia is at. Now, we do have a nonprofit, GSEF. So we interviewed the leader of GSEF, and that was really cool. So that's also an option for like schools in Georgia. So yeah, I'm always just fascinated to hear about nonprofits and how they're doing it, because that's not like the ecosystem that I'm in.
Right.
So let's go back to the beginning with you now. Were you a gamer? Like, how did you kind of pivot into esports? And just something like that.
And so, I mean, I think it's neat is, I think one of the reasons that Garden State Esports is being successful is I have a foot in a bunch of these worlds where my father is in the military. And he would do communications, and that was kind of his vocation there. And when he left the military, he got a job at AT&T driving trucks, and eventually the opportunity was given to him to go back to college, to night school, to learn how to repair computers and move out of a truck and into a computer repair role. And I must have been maybe 4 or 5 at the time. And that was kind of how my dad and I bonded. Is he would drive trucks during the day, and he usually went to college at night, and I barely saw him. But when I did, is we would basically do his homework, which was taking apart and building computers. And then he went on to be, he wound up running basically, the tri-state areas IT for AT&T and stuff like that. But what that did for me was, from a young age, I was always very comfortable with computers. A lot of my kids, especially today, are stunned. I've never owned a console, no PlayStation, no Xbox. I always have been on a PC, and it was very easy to go from building them. And then, when I first started, it was DOS and playing, DOS games and stuff like that. And then I got Windows, and then there were Windows games. And but the esports part really started with StarCraft. When StarCraft came out, I was like in 8th grade. It was a huge hit between my friends and I, where, we would drag our computers to our buddy's house and have these big LAN parties in his basement. And then, we would go to like local land like tournaments. I remember, oh, what was the tech store that everybody loved that went out of business that I can't remember? Oh, it's gonna bother me. Anyway, they would host these tournaments and in their building and their stores, and we would go and play. And I'm a very competitive person by nature because same thing. I've wrestled my entire life. I played football. I've coached varsity sports here in New Jersey, for 15 years. So having a background in esports, having a background in coaching, being a competitive person, I've always kind of been involved in that sphere. I would enter tournaments in college for fun, in CS:GO, and now that I have two sons, under 3, I play a lot of Hearthstone on mobile, and enter those kind of fun tournaments when I can. So yeah, I mean, it's always kind of been part of my life. And from the educator side, when I was teaching English, I taught high school English for 10 years. And a lot of the relationship building I did with my students was around, video games. And, I taught the toughest level of English. A lot of these kids had given up on school, and I started to change a lot of stuff in my classroom. We stopped doing essays and I started letting them do blogging. And I would pair a video game with a book, and so we would read the book, but then we would play the game as a class, and we would, the same lesson plans you would do to compare two pieces of literature. We just considered, the video games to do literature. And I remember one time in secret, we did the Telltale Walking Dead games for our lessons on ethics and morality and stuff like that. And just to see, the kids, number one, locked in when you teach them what you want them to know through something that they love was a lot of fun. But then the other side of it was like, that was the conversations I was always having with these kids, what games are you playing? And then I let them bring in their consoles. We hooked it up to the class TV, and they were coming in on lunch, and they were self-organizing tournaments in the class and stuff like that. So I always kind of had an idea, between who I was and who they were, that like video games was like this bridge to help me connect with them. And then, I had tried to start an esports team at the high school where I was teaching English for years, and it was always a no for one reason or another, the equipment and the violence and all that stuff. But I eventually changed jobs. I got an opportunity to go over to a school district called Fairhaven, and they let me start the first middle school esports team in the country. There was nobody else to play, so we played colleges, for the first year, and that got a lot of, national attention. We were on PBS and NBC and stuff like that. And a lot of schools from around the country kind of, I guess, saw it, and they reached out to me and said, hey, we have a video game club. We'd be happy to play with you. So not a lot of people know, but the first year of Garden State Esports, or even before it was Garden State Esports, I was running, a national league for like 40 middle schools on like a Google spreadsheet. Then COVID hit, and it kind of shut down everything in these kids' lives, but I wanted to keep it going. So I tried to, I let the kids take home the school computers, and then I tried to reach out to, other school districts in our area and say, you have a video game club, can you get some kids together? So we started to play, and, slowly people started to join. And the longer COVID went on, like the more districts kind of like saw the need for a way for kids to socialize, even if it was digitally. And here we are finally coming out of COVID. We just ended the mask mandate. We're all back, full time. School seems pretty normal right now, at least in New Jersey, for the last, couple months, and hoping it stays that way. But we're up to, like I said, 168 school districts, which is 5,300 kids. I have 200 teams playing. Yeah, and that's kind of how it all happened, and how the background, gaming and athletics and coaching kind of all came together for this beautiful disaster that's Garden State Esports.
I think that's awesome. So I bet there are a lot of people who are curious like me. What about like funding for a nonprofit? Like how does that go for Garden State Esports?
Yeah, so I mean, I do a lot of talks about nonprofits now, and I think it's relatable because I knew nothing about running a nonprofit when I started a nonprofit. And so one of the things that I have learned is a nonprofit operates just like a for-profit, right? So we can raise as much money in as many different ways, just at like a regular company. It's just that, if and when Garden State Esports ever goes away, that money needs to go somewhere, that is also for a public good. So I've been very lucky. Very early, I was able to convince, really kind of, I guess, started out with friends. I had been in the ed tech scene for a while. I ran a blog, or I still run a blog, techupteacher.com. And I was doing ed tech trainings and doing work for Google and going out and teaching, how to use Google Classroom and how to do these cool things with Google tools. And one of the first people I met, we started doing, the ed tech roadshow, we called it, together like 10 years ago, was Katrina Keene, Dr. Katrina Keene. And she is now the head of esports for SHI. And what's interesting is SHI is also headquartered in Kenilworth, New Jersey. And it was kind of neat how our paths kind of reconnected, after a couple of years of not seeing each other. And, SHI being a wonderful partner, SHI doing a lot of sales and reselling to schools in New Jersey, and SHI now, sharing the vision for esports that we had at Garden State Esports. They were our first, I not necessarily a donor, not kind of like a sponsor, but they said, hey, we believe in what you're doing. Here's this money. We don't want anything in return. We kind of grew from there. I lucked out where, again, as I'm learning, there are community foundations in each county here in New Jersey. And I was also very lucky to make a connection with the community foundation where I live. I'm from Ocean County, New Jersey. And just down the road from me, literally I could see it from my house, is the headquarters of the Grunin Foundation. And Jeremy Grunin, a wonderful guy, runs a family foundation. He was an early donor and was able to help me, kind of get everything up and going. And so, I got lucky early. And I think, it's the story that I told. And I think the story may be different than what people expected. Is as much as I like video games and competition, and I know you're basically the best League of Legends player on earth, like that competition, right? That competition like drives us. Like we enjoy it. We like to be competitive. But shockingly, most people don't know what esports is, and most people don't care about competitive gaming, right? It's shocking. So the story I always lead with is esports is a fantastic way to teach kids career and technical education, right? Because we know esports is the fastest growing industry in the world. And Garden State Esports not only helps start esports teams, but we help schools start team behind the team. So we have team statisticians and team entrepreneurs and journalists and IT people, right? So every role that an esports company would have, right? So imagine like a C9, imagine like a Dignitas or something like that. Every role that is filled, or that exists in a for-profit is filled by kids, right? And so that's that hands-on CTE experience, and that has been really, really successful, right? A lot of the schools are getting involved just for that aspect because we have CTE standards they need to meet. The fact that it's hands-on learning in a lucrative field, and it's really hard to be serious about STEM but not be serious about esports because they're so interconnected and there's so much opportunity there. And then the other side of this is SEL. From a traditional standpoint, right, it's really hard to argue that having kids involved in sports or extracurricular activities is beneficial to them, right? It leads to better learning outcomes. A lot of schools are choosing to tie esports to behavior, grades, and attendance. And when you look at who is participating in esports, like Garden State Esports, north of 50% of the league, they don't do anything else, these kids. Like this is what they come to school to do. And so now to be able to reach those kids and, being able to have something to look forward to and something to motivate them to do the right thing and get good grades, on top of, all of the work we're doing around, exterminating misogyny, racism, and homophobia, and teaching kids, how to create and protect safe and inclusive spaces. I'm sure you have tons of stories of what it's like to be, a competitive female gamer and the way that you were treated. And, that's part of the work that we're doing is we are bringing this into the schools. Most parents don't monitor or know what goes on online with their kids. And we're, getting these teacher role models, and we are, like anything else, using what these kids love to teach them what we want them to know. And that is, it's not okay to treat people that way, whether you're anonymous and you don't think you're going to get caught and all that good stuff. It's not okay. And so that story of, the type of kids that are coming out, or 12% of my league are students with disabilities, right? Special needs students, whether they're on the spectrum or have some physical or learning disability. These are kids that are getting involved for the first time in something competitive. Even at my old team, we had this kid's grandparents fly in from Georgia to watch him play because he's never done anything like this before. And to see that kid so excited when he walks in, because I'm extra, if you didn't know. So like we have the community come in, we do like little entrances, and just like you would go to a basketball game or a wrestling match, like that's what we try to make it, like atmosphere and excitement. But yeah, like this kid's grandparents flew in from Georgia because he'd never done anything. And just to see how excited he was and how proud he was to have somebody there to like, see him for the first time do something like that. I think that has been what's driven a lot of the funding success for Garden State Esports is everybody seems to know or has a kid who loves games and would benefit from a program like this, connecting games to education and SEL and STEM and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how many job opportunities can stem from esports involvement.
It's nutty.
Yeah, or that, the fact that females like myself, like female gamers, we're still treated like garbage, even though it's 2022.
Absolutely.
A lot of women's voices get silenced in the professional world, and it's important that we do put a stop to that.
Yeah, I mean, and even I think it goes beyond that professional world, right? I teach middle school STEM all the way down to 4th and 5th grade, where I start with an esports elective. And, I make sure that my class is mixed, boys and girls, right? I split them up and, make sure that I kind of have even numbers of each, when they come in to see me. And already in 4th and 5th grade, these boys are giving these girls a hard time. Oh, you can't be good at games, you're a girl. And a lot of them, are parroting what older brothers are saying, or their streamers or YouTubers are saying. But when I address it, which is where I usually start with, is like how we're going to treat each other. It's very easy to convince a 4th and 5th grader, right, to treat somebody the way that they should be treated, right? It's a lot different than treating, the behavior of a high schooler or a college student. But then, when I start doing like a video game design class, or one of my new favorite things is if have you done Rocket League bot yet?
No, I have not.
Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh my God. So Rocket League bot is a program that, I don't know, I'm a STEM teacher, I guess I should know, but somehow it connects into Rocket League and you can program a car and then have it play other programmed cars in like these AI tournaments. And it uses Scratch and Python. It's fantastic.
That sounds so cool. That would be that's best. So cool.
Oh, it's the best. But, so if I'm doing like a Rocket League bot coding class, those same boys unchecked who were giving girls a hard time in 4th and 5th grade are now giving them a hard time in STEM classes in 7th and 8th grade, right? So we need to make sure as educators that we are leveraging esports and gaming clubs to make sure that people are treated the way that they should be treated.
Agreed. Now let me ask you this. What have been some challenges that you have faced as a nonprofit? I know in Georgia, we have a bunch of esports companies that offer it. We have the High School Esports Association, and then we have a nonprofit, and then we have Play Versus. So what's been some challenges as a nonprofit in New Jersey?
Some of it stems from that I am a teacher by day and running the nonprofit by night, almost a dual role. And people believe that you can't do both successfully. People believe because we're teachers and we are letting schools play for free that we must be offering subpar service, or we're cobbled together with string and glue because we're not worth $100 million and we're investing all this money into technology and all that stuff. So I would say, I think in the beginning, at least, it was getting people to take us seriously. When you go to a school board, and you're saying, hey, we have this fun nonprofit league that you can join for free versus, some of these pitches that the for-profits are giving, and, we'll also give you the switches for free. And it's in ways, in some ways it's hard to compete. But I think what has driven our success is these schools keep coming back and they're telling, their neighboring school districts that they had a great experience. And I think that's where the growth is coming from. So, but I would say, on one hand, it has been getting schools and maybe people in the for-profit space, sponsors and stuff like that, to take it seriously. But I think the scholastic movement is continuing to grow. I think the other, kind of big issue we're having is around exclusivity. And some of these publishers are choosing to make their games wholly inaccessible to anybody but one company. And that's an issue, for a couple different reasons. Number one, and most importantly, is it's an equity issue. Only schools that can afford to play, pay these high fees are going to be able to play these games. And when you look at some of these exclusivity deals, right, mainly if you look at Riot and you look at Blizzard, League of Legends and Overwatch are two of the most scholarshiped games at the collegiate level. So if they can only be played, by schools with, and kids who can afford to play them, well, there's a lot of kids who are going to be left out. And the reality is a lot of them are the Black and brown kids. A lot of them are from the districts that are already struggling and where there's already equity issues. Which is the same reason why one of the biggest initiatives that I've fought for and continue to fight for in New Jersey is getting varsity letters for these kids for esports. Just because if you are a participant at your school and you don't earn a varsity letter, but I have varsity esports at my school and I'm a 4-year letter winner and a captain, and then the poor kid down the street doesn't even have an esports team, well, some of our resumes are going to look better. Some of us are going to have access to these opportunities when others do not. And that's the real issue that I have. And so I'm hoping that as we gain legitimacy, people realize that there is enough seats to go around. Everybody deserves a seat at the table. And when you lock this kind of stuff up behind one provider, not only does it hurt kids, but there's nothing then that holds that provider to making sure that they're putting out a quality product. You know what I mean? If they have a monopoly, there's no reason to get better. There's no reason, to continue to refine and improve your product. And so, I'm hoping that we see the continued growth in the scholastic esports space where these publishers are starting to realize, well, if I go exclusive with one company, I'm losing opportunities to go to, these 15 states with nonprofits and these other for-profits. And, so we're hoping to make enough of an impact where these publishers maybe second guess whether or not exclusivity is right for them, because you're going to lock out a big piece of the market.
That's exactly what I was thinking as you were talking. Like, as a publisher, you want everybody playing your game.
Yeah.
And if you lock it, then, there's a large part of the population that you're just going to lock out.
Yeah. I mean, and I think too, I think sometimes educators too don't realize their own power. And so, for those games that are out of reach for organizations like Garden State Esports, then we're just going to find another game to play. And when enough people take that path of we'll just find another game to play, well, now the collegiate scene has to respond, right? Because you would imagine their talent pool is drying up. The publishers, have to respond because not as many people are playing the game. And you got to remember, like, at least with Garden State Esports, my youngest team are fourth graders. So if you were to switch over to a Smite from a League of Legends when these kids are in fourth grade and they don't know what either of them are, League of Legends is huge now, but in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it might be Smite. And that might be because that's what all of the educator leagues decided to play. And so I always go back to there's room for everybody at the table, instead of pulling up seats, let's put them out and let's make sure that these kids get to play the games they want the way that we want, in a meaningful way that helps further the goal of, career and technical education and social emotional learning.
and promoting, environments of inclusion, diversity, and
Hmm.
equity. That's what
Yeah,
we want at the heart of education. That's what we want for all of our students.
absolutely.
And it's just disheartening when it doesn't happen, no matter, what space it's in.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. I don't know if you've been following the news, right? But um, as we have reached out to publishers, one of the things that we heard loud and clear is that they don't have the bandwidth to deal with all of us as individuals. So what we announced about a month ago now at the NACAD conference was the launch of the ISEA, the Interstate Scholastic Esports Alliance. And so what we did is those 15 state-run, educator nonprofits, we formed a national nonprofit. And one of our main goals is going to be to work with publishers to secure scholastic licenses, something, above the community guidelines. And then in some cases below, any exclusives or, partnership deals that they have, because we feel like that middle ground, like we don't want to be the 1% Overwatch League, the best of the best play here, right? The reality is most of the kids in Garden State Esports, most of the kids, hopefully they're not listening, they're not very good. They just want to play and have fun. They just want to be with their friends and be part of a team. So if you're telling me that, these for-profits want to be the place where the best of the best play, fantastic. I hope the best kids, go play there in New Jersey and play against other teams from across the country. We would even be open to, sending our state champions to some type of for-profit run national tournament or something like that. But what we're not okay with is, saying who's allowed to use the word varsity, like it's something that's, copyrighted or something like that. Who's allowed to have school versus school varsity seasons. You can play the game for 2 weeks, but you can't play the game for 8 weeks. And you can have a playoff if you're for profit, but you can't have any playoffs if you are not it's just, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And I know the argument is that nobody owns the IP for football. And I kind of get that argument, but even if somebody did, it just doesn't make sense to divide and split up your users and to lock certain users out and say, hey, this game is free to play for everybody, except if you're an educator or a student who wants to play in a school. Now that free game costs money, and honestly, it's not even the money piece. School districts, maybe eventually see the value and they budget for that kind of stuff. But it's just making sure that everybody gets a seat at the table.
I agree with that. In most schools, at least the schools in my area, we're Title I. So we're like high poverty. So we're already like stretched pretty thin with our budget.
Yeah, 40% of my league is Title I.
A lot of programs in Georgia were just self-funded. And if you live in kind of like a small community, a lot of your resources are kind of already tapped when it comes to fundraising. So, I mean, there are definitely a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Now, I know we're kind of getting close to our time to go, but is there anything that you would like to say to the audience, like about a nonprofit, maybe starting a nonprofit, words of encouragement, just kind of any last words that you would like to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is whether or not you want to get as serious as starting a nonprofit, you want to get as serious as starting something on a state level. I think the biggest thing to understand is it's not hard to do this yourself. Teachers have done so much with so little for so long that we could basically do anything with nothing, right? Google Sheets and Google Forms and a Google site are plenty to start an esports league within your school, within, a couple districts around you. And I think the more grassroots, teacher run, student first opportunities that we create, is in the long term going to benefit everybody. But in the short term, we're going to provide the best experience we can for kids. And overwhelmingly what kids want is they just want to compete as part of a team. They don't even care necessarily if they're all that good. And they want to play against, schools in their area. They want to play the same rivals that they play in football and the same teams they see during the basketball season. So you might be surprised that there are already a lot of these type of grassroots organizations out there. Whether they're doing things at a city level, they're doing things at a regional level. they're doing things right in your state, even like a Georgia, that has a athletic association, that has an official partner and all that stuff. There's still grassroots organizations that are running, I don't want to say counter, but are running, parallel organizations, serving different constituents. So reach out, ask around. The hashtag is esportsedu on Twitter. Like everything else, you can go to Twitter and find out all the secrets and who's in your area and who you can talk to. And the esports edu community is super welcoming. We're always happy to talk and share resources and game rules and best practices and how to talk to your IT about it, how to talk to your board about starting a team, and what to say when somebody says violent video games cause violent kids and all that different stuff that we've all, had to deal with, and we've made mistakes and learned from. We can share and help you get started, right? Because I think the more we democratize scholastic esports, and the more voices and the more seats and the more people we get involved, we have a real opportunity to shape the whole scene and make sure, there's something in it for everybody.
Now, before we go, is there anything you want to plug? Any websites, Twitters, social media handles?
Yeah, check out Garden State Esports, gsesports.org. Everything that we have is on our resources page for free. So anything that we use in New Jersey to get school started and to run our leagues is on the website for free. Please take it, steal it, change the name to your organization, put your logo on it, and serve your kids, because that's what it's all about. And then if you want to start to see what's going on with the national scene with the Interstate Scholastic Esports Association, you can check out isea.gg or interstateesports.org. I think that's the right URL. We just bought that one. But isea.gg is definitely working. And you can kind of see, what states are in, what regions are starting up, and how you can get involved.
Chris, I just really want to say it has been fascinating talking to you. And I really, it's really interesting. Like, I want to have you on the show some more as the nonprofit progresses, because I want to keep up to date with everything that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to come back anytime and tell you how we're doing and tell you how the national scene is doing. And maybe we'll get you in Georgia, join up, be part of it,
Sure. Well, thank you. This has been very, very informational to me. I hope it's been very informational to our listeners. We appreciate it. And, we hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Really, guys, that was a pretty amazing interview. I'm always interested to hear from nonprofits and just how people run different esports programs. I'm always just very fascinated with that. So I guess it's time for Will's favorite segment, 1 minute rant. So I guess it's my turn to rant, and I will have to try to time myself. Okay, so my minute rant is about, let me think for a minute. What am I going to rant about? All the forfeits. Okay, yeah, I'm going to rant about all the forfeits. All right. I don't know if this is only a problem in Georgia, but there have been like just a ton of forfeits across all the games. League of Legends, Rocket League, Super Smash, Mario Kart. Like, what is going on? I actually know the answer to that. I know that COVID's still going on. And I don't mean to sound insensitive to that, but in Georgia specifically, we cannot play from home. We have to play in person. And I know that that's probably a struggle, but contact me before game day. Contact me like a day in advance, 2 days in advance, not 30 minutes before the game, not 5 minutes before the game. If you're asking for a reschedule, please do it in a timely manner. And as a fellow educator, I know that we get very busy, and I understand, but just do it as a courtesy. Reach out, contact that coach, make sure that everything's good to go. I always contact the coach on game day. All right, so that's my minute rant. I'm tired of these forfeits. My kids aren't getting to play. It's very disappointing. Their stats get messed up if they don't play sometimes. And also they paid, they paid to participate, and they're not getting the gaming experience that they should have. Now, I will say the forfeits have gotten a little bit better this past week, but the previous 2 weeks, it was a little rough. So, I know extenuating circumstances happen. If your school falls into that category, please just contact the other person in advance if you can. I know things come up, and I don't want educators to feel attacked. I know you guys feel like we're attacked enough as it is. That is my minute rant. And also, I'm not blaming you. It might sound like that. I promise you I'm not. I'm not blaming you, educators. You're awesome. I know that we're dealing with a lot right now in the school, COVID, repercussions of online learning, all of that stuff. So it's just a rant about what grinded my gears this week. So yeah, that's our episode. I do hope everybody enjoyed it. It was my first time flying solo. I hope that Wil will be back for the next episode. And I'll go ahead and tell you, some of the upcoming episodes might not be posted every week. Like I said, it's a very busy time. I will try to do my best. Wil will try to do his best. But, it's just very busy. Once the summer hits and we have a little bit more free time, I think we'll be able to get you guys some really good episodes. And as always, if you want to come on the show, feel free to contact us at the esports report hs@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. So please feel free to contact us, and I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll just say bye.